my name's Alan, and for my master's dissertation, I did an analysis of the linguistic representation of affect in ELT Coursebook Materials. The reason why I did affect was um, I had a pretty serious interest in the affective forms of learning from a previous PhD and master's. And as Daniel Goleman talks about in his emotional intelligence book, it's a pretty unexplored area of scientific interest, even though there's a lot of books out there using keywords like mindfulness and all this well-being stuff, and it's based on literally nothing. It's also quite interesting to explore children's emotional habits because we're teaching kids all the time, yet are we teaching them right? And are we teaching them emotional intelligence in the correct way? Apparently not. So in ELT, Arnold says that the affective aspect of ELT is completely absent. Research has started to appear much more recently. Dwally, whose name I'm definitely mispronouncing, says the two of the earliest adjectives people learn in English is happy and sad. And then nothing. So what do we do? You only have two words. In the CEFR, they talk about you can convey degrees of emotion at B2 level. Grand, but what about A1, A2, and B1? That's three major levels in the CFRs, and that could take you years to progress through them. So what are we doing? So my research questions, I want to look at young learners. I want to look at what happens at B2 level coursebook material, and then how can we put those two things together. So for my young learner study, I got 10 books, Superminds units or books 1 to 5, and Kizbox books 1 to 5, which I have taught ad nauseum in Spain. Put these into the NWatch program, all 10 books. I looked for emotionally laden vocabulary, which I checked off against an emotional dictionary and 2 published word lists, and found that the fourth book in each actually had the highest amount of emotional vocabulary. The fourth book was strangely enough also the most challenging for the vocabulary, as opposed to the fifth book, which was an assumption. And the book's use of the word not was actually more difficult when they could have just used antonyms, which may have been easier if you're a second language learner, because you can put 2 and 2 together in your head instead of using not a thing, and then you have to translate it in your L1. And then my big study was a visual content analysis. So I used the rules laid out by Gillian Rose and Klaus Krippendorf in 2 actually very readable books. And got together 5 books that I have used at B2 level, so Objective First, Face-to-Face, Straightforward English File, and Empower. I graded every image and question that was related to that image for emotionally laden vocabulary. So I set out in the books, what I did was I had to design codes where I had to link all text with images. This took a lot of trial and error, and it needs to be extremely strict. It needs to be exclusive to every single image and text, and it needs to be replicable. So through a lot of trial and error, I got this down to the codes you can see on the screen. So every text that links to an image is either strong positive, weak positive, neutral. It's either weak negative or strong negative. So basically, here's an example here. So this is a page from Face to Face, upper intermediate. This is 2 happy people, so obviously they're positive. But if you go through the text, there is 2 positive terms used, but 3 negative terms used, so that equals a negative. So the overall score of that is it's neutral. Across all 5 books, I got 608 data points. Results, as you can see, are as expected. Everything's generally positive or neutral, apart from English file. Over 50% of English file is miserable, which is quite amazing. So we really need to be aware of how we're teaching this material and the effect that that's having on students. If you have over 50% of a book that is miserable, what effect is that having on people? So teachers need to be more aware of how they're getting across messages and how they're using emotion in the classroom. The directors and head of studies need to be more aware of what's in coursebook material. And coursebook material really needs to implement some emotional material at a much lower level, and especially aimed at young learner material. If you want to hear about all my literature review and some of my conference presentations, ELT Ireland, Future of ELT, and TESOL France all this year. Y ya está. Slán go fóill.